The transitional government of Mali, led by Colonel Assimi Goita, has banned a coalition of 30 opposition parties in the country. The country's interim head of state took power in May 2021 after dismissing the democratically elected president Bah Ndaw in a coup. The banning of opposition groups has made Malians and close followers question if this is another dictatorial uprising in the country. Officials say they are threats of disturbance to public order. A coalition called Action Synergy for Mali, which was set up in February and consists of about 30 opposition parties, including supporters of a popular Imam called Mahmoud Dicko, has been a thorn in Goita's flesh. Due to the security situation and the risk of threats to public order, the activities of Action Synergy for Mali have been suspended throughout the entire district of Bamako and other parts of the country. In today's video, we will be talking about how Assimi Goita and his fellow men are dictating government policies in Mali and trying to limit the activities of their opponents. Make sure you watch this video till the end to uncover this story. Most dictatorships are formed through military means or a political party. Nearly half of dictatorships start as a military coup, though others have been started by foreign intervention, election officials ending competitive elections, insurgent takeovers, popular uprisings by citizens, or legal maneuvering by autocratic elites to take power within their government. Mali saw 31 years of dictatorship, with her former leaders until 1991 when a military coup, led by Amadou Toumani Touré, ousted the government, established a new constitution, and instituted a multi-party democracy. Rising ethnic tensions and the influx of al-Qaeda fighters from Libya in 2012 led to a rebellion and military coup. One could say that things changed all of a sudden again in that same year. Democracy in Africa is more often spoken of than practiced. The UN has expressed its deep concerns over the disbanding of civil society organizations and increasing restrictions on human rights and fundamental freedoms in Mali. At least 4 organizations have been dissolved in Mali since December 2023, including groups related to good governance, elections, and opposition parties. According to spokesman of Action Synergy for Mali, people's expectations are far from being met. They have strongly criticized the military regime in power and proposed a new way of life for the people of Mali, who have seen their country destroyed by various groups linked to al-Qaeda and other terrorist movements since 2012. Action Synergy announced its rejection of the decision issued by Governor Abdoulaye Coulibaly, considering it illegitimate, illegal, and violating the freedom of expression guaranteed by Mali's constitution. The ban comes in the context of the postponement of presidential elections that were scheduled for February without setting a new date. Since the August 2020 coup, ECOWAS has tried to set a period of military rule to no avail. Earlier this year, Mali, alongside Niger and Burkina Faso, announced their withdrawal from ECOWAS due to military takeovers of their respective governments. The Military Council announced that it would hand over power to civilians at the end of the transitional period in March 2024 before elections were postponed. The Democratic Lead for Change, which is one of the opposition parties, expressed disappointment and condemned the military government's attempt to take the Malian democracy hostage. Another party called Yelema says the ban is a result of a lack of foresightedness and the incompetence of the government, who have refused to honor their commitments. Holding elections is a matter of political will, and some of the technical reasons cited by the military government could have been avoided. President Goita has repeatedly engaged in public ceremonies to rehabilitate the perception of military governance since he took over power. He sought counsel from former military dictator Moussa Traoré during a public visit in Bamako some years back. It is important to note that Moussa Traoré led Mali from 1968 to 1991, and during this time, corruption ran rampant, and the economic situation of Mali became even more anemic. He established a highly repressive regime that routinely opened fire on protesters and eliminated rivals or those that dared to voice dissent. Initially, Goita's government proposed to remain in power for a 3-year military transition, and this generated sharp domestic opposition and international condemnation. West African heads of state, in a bid to find a solution to the political situations in Mali. Burkina Faso, and Niger have always been divided on sanctions to give these countries, as the coup leaders maintain that it will take years before holding fresh elections. In 2022, Mali's foreign minister, Abdoulaye Diop, announced to ECOWAS that the transition period back to democracy will be extended to 5 years. In response, the bloc decided to close its borders, sever diplomatic ties, and impose tough economic sanctions on Mali, with regard to its unacceptable delay in holding elections following a coup in 2020. Mali has a long history of national consultations to discuss problems and recommended solutions, but several main parties have snubbed the process this time, demanding swift holding of elections, criticizing most of the discussions as fruitless. Western powers have a hand in the persistence of dictatorship in Mali. On September 25, 2023, when Mali announced that presidential elections would be delayed, Western powers remained silent. The United States can impact events in Bamako, but in the long run, Washington's reputation can be strengthened by publicly opposing unrestricted military control in Mali and other neighboring nations. A recent wave of coups in the Sahel and elsewhere in Africa has involved officers who show no serious willingness to hand power back to civilians, as is the case with Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. Assimi Goita and associates have been key movers in elaborating the playbook, extending their transition time, and again, Goita and company came to power, appointed a civilian-led transition, overthrew their own civilian appointees, defied sanctions from ECOWAS, compromised on a transition for this year, and have now begun to tamper with the timetable. Malian colonels have repeatedly exposed the weak hand of regional and Western diplomats. What happens in Mali has serious ramifications for how officers in other countries, some of whom are in close contact with Mali's military government, will approach their own transition timetables. Looking at all that's going on in Mali, one can say a new law in the country promises elections, but not a return to civilian rule. This is a clear illustration that Assimi Goita is working on dictatorial propaganda, perhaps, without making everything clear. The 2022 electoral law adopted in Mali set the legislative groundwork for general elections this year, but no serious steps have been taken in that light. The law only adds to and widens the sphere of military control in Mali. The entire country of Mali is immobilized due to the suspension of its democracy. The nation has become more totalitarian as a result of the military government that oversaw the coups in 2020 and 2021. Since Goita took power, the army has continuously attacked freedom of speech, imprisoned numerous civil society leaders, and intensified human rights violations, while conducting military operations. Democratic norms in Mali are at stake because the government has weakened all institutions, particularly the justice system, creating uncertainty about a return to normal constitutional order. Restrictions on civic space have made the civil society to be unable to influence the government. The only exceptions to these are religious leaders, who have emerged as the sole group, capable of mobilizing followers without limitations. Mali has returned to more isolationist policies and turned her back to traditional allies, notably France and the US, while aligning with Russia. Mali is also demonstrating hostility towards its neighbors, Senegal and Ivory Coast. The Goita government has taken steps to improve the business environment by updating the mining code and implementing new investment policies. However, some of these reforms do not demonstrate commitment to a liberal economy. Instead, they signal to the business community a willingness to renegotiate deals based on political objectives. The deterioration of the rule of law in Mali has resulted in the removal of various checks and balances, replacing due process with threats. As we speak, the government has launched investigations into corruption and embezzlement against the governments and close relatives of former presidents Ibrahim Keita and Bah Ndaw, which they perceive were more as politically motivated than genuinely committed to integrity. The transitional council members were selected by the military government in an attempt to project a veil of legitimacy. They are not representatives of the people, and they remain a highly consultative body, whose influence over state processes remains minimal. Most strategic positions in Mali are handled by pro-Goita military persons. Let's take an example of the Modibo Kaitet Internal Airport, the Gabriel Tour University Hospital, and the National Health Insurance Fund, amongst others. The military appoints officials to great positions and can reshuffle them at will. Several media have been banned in Mali. Joliba TV News had its license suspended in November 2022 for a commentary deemed too critical of the government. Journalist Malik Konate has faced threats for his investigative work on groups close to the transitional government who refuse to protect him. Many other journalists are either censored or choose self-censorship so that they will not have problems with the government. Interestingly, foreign media operating in Mali are no longer able to freely work there. One common inquiry concerning dictatorships is whether or not the countries involved are developing. This is not the actual case for Mali. Several corruption scandals, particularly regarding the allocation of subsidized housing to the family of the transitional prime minister, Choguel Maïga, reveal how institutions are being exploited for political purposes. Malians face a significant shortage of electricity and water. Statistics show that only 48% of Malians have access to electricity. Urban and rural areas have unequal access to basic amenities, with northern regions being severely deficient. The available services still suffer from underfunding, resulting in inadequate maintenance, leaving them incapable of coping with pressures from a growing population. Insecurity in central and northern Mali has led to the closure of several state administrations, particularly city halls and courts, thus resulting in significant gaps in service delivery. Law enforcement and justice are inaccessible to the majority of Malians. Malians must continue to be watchful, participate actively in politics, and demand transparency from their leaders. The people of Mali have the power to influence their nation's destiny and protect democratic values by building a robust civil society, respecting the rule of law, and calling for accountability and transparency. A better understanding of Mali's political position can be attained by examining the new leadership's activities, monitoring reactions from other countries, and enabling the country's citizens to actively engage in democratic processes. Whatever the case, we are here to continue giving you updates on the turnout of events in Mali. What do you think about Assimi Goita and his military government? Are they fighting for the liberation of the people from foreign influence, just as before independence, or for personal interest? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the New Tourist channel. Turn on notifications too, so you get notified whenever we upload videos like this. Thanks for watching and see you in our next video.